Gabe, I don't know what browser you use, but there is a new browser coming out powered by OpenAI, and I think we should talk about that a little bit today. And Gabe, as you know, I, of course, am a Firefox user, very, very proudly so. I don't know if that's like a bad thing or like puts me in like a different generation, but very happy with the Firefox user experience. But with OpenAI's new browser coming out any day now, I think it's going to be a pretty big change in the browser industry. Is that an industry?
Oh, it's
I'm going to
definitely
say
an
it is.
industry. Yes, 100%.
There's
And
one
Chrome,
player in it, and
yeah, it's
that's it.
basically Chrome, which is I was looking at you actually might have sent me this article where it was talking about the percentages of people that use each kind of browser, and I'm pretty sure it was 70% of people use Chrome. Like 70% of people on planet Earth use Chrome. And then another, I want to say it was 18% use Safari. And the reality is that's probably just because it's the default in iPhone or Apple devices, and then everything else just sort of falls into that remaining. Would that be? Remaining 12%. Did I do that math correctly? I think that's right. 22%. No, 12%. I'm terrible at math on the fly.
Yeah,
Apparently,
this is way too much math to start the podcast with.
I
We
know.
got to
I
keep the
should have done that.
retention
But
rates up.
regardless, you are in the minority with your Firefox piece, I believe. And what's interesting is that OpenAI isn't the only other company launching an AI-based browser. Perplexity has launched theirs recently called Comet, which did you actually look at much of that I sent you?
I
you?
did.
It was pretty cool.
I was so excited. I was like, I've got to try this out. And then I saw it was part of their premium offering, which is like
Yes.
$200 a month. And
I'm definitely not going to pay for it, but it did look cool.
And it kind of actually goes into a conversation, Gabe, we are going to, I'm sure, pick up in hopefully in a month's time. But if OpenAI launches this new browser, I sent a text to you and I said one of the biggest assets OpenAI could have from this is sadly the data. And I don't think that's a sad point, but sad to the user, your data is going to be a huge asset to OpenAI. But I also think of the experience. And Gabe, we talk a lot about Gemini search, Google search mode, the AI search mode in the past. And, I've got the button on my phone now that maps directly to ChatGPT. If I do a Google search, that AI mode is kind of the first thing that comes up. So I'm very interested to see how integrated that tool is. But more to come on that in the future. I do have to say, though, on the Firefox note, I don't know if I've told you this story, but the reason I use Firefox is a few years ago, there was an Apple update and they changed the size of the icons in the dock. And Google was so late to update their icon, I downloaded Firefox so it would be the same size and match the other icons. And then after using it, I was like, oh, this is actually a really nice browser. And, I'm not sending tons of data out into, the open. So still using Firefox, still using Chrome, but Firefox is my desktop browser of choice.
That's hilarious. I love that. It's like the graphic designer in you, Zach, just couldn't handle the fact that the icons were the different size. Well, going back to a point you made on the data piece of this, just to talk about the Perplexity one. So I watched a couple of the videos of what the Comet AI browser looks like. And you bring up a really good point around the data. So the cool thing about what they showed in Comet is it understands all of your information. It has all of that data. And so it's able to really personalize that experience. And one of the demonstrations that they showed was adding groceries to your cart and then buying that on Instacart and just integrating that directly into Instacart. So here's the list of groceries that I want, or here's a recipe that I want to make. What are all of the things that I need? Please just go add those into my Instacart cart. And the other one they showed was a shopping one on Amazon where it was, what was the last creatine powder that I bought? And it has the context because it has that personalized data. It goes and searches through and then just automatically added that into your Amazon cart. So it's that personalized experience. And to your point, it costs money to use this browser currently. In my view, it would have to save you a tremendous amount of time in order to be worthwhile to start using it. But I think at some point, if Google starts integrating some of these things into Chrome, that price is going to come down considerably or potentially just become free. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this space.
Absolutely. And I hate to say it, Gabe, but I feel bad for the browser that comes with Apple Intelligence. But moving on away from that,
Uh,
Gabe, we talk a little bit about AI here, and while we haven't explicitly, recommended a specific tool, one of the things I think we should dive more into is, regardless of what tool you're using, how do you use it? How do you, get a specific or an ideal output? And I think that's really what I want to focus on today is providing some tips and tricks on prompting. Where do you start with AI? And Gabe, I think we've got some fantastic examples, both for our broadband and non-broadband listeners, of course, and perhaps Remy's mom as well. But I think we have a great episode today on how to get started with AI.
yeah, I'm excited about this because it's, as you said, we obviously talk about AI a lot on the show, but we haven't really talked about like tactical and practical examples of how to use it in a more effective way. And I think we've learned a lot in our own lives of, just leveraging this both from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective and thinking about, okay, what are those really specific tactical, practical things that people can take back to their day to day to make their interactions with AI more effective?
So let's just jump right into it, Gabe.
Let's do
Here,
it.
the types of prompts, and I know this is going to sound boring, but I think as we walk through them, you're going to be like, "Oh, that's me." And the first type of prompt I want to talk about is a direct prompt. And I think when we get started with AI, like I'm thinking like years ago with like ChatGPT, I feel like this is where I was. It's a direct prompt. It's simply stating a task. Summarize this text. Do this. And that's kind of your most basic prompt. You're going to get an output, but there's better ways to get maybe a more refined response from AI. So that's a direct prompt. Another one example of a direct prompt would be translate this. That's another one I see a lot. So just kind of direct tasks. Another type of prompt here, and this is actually three types, and you'll kind of catch on, which one's which here, but you have one, few, and multi shot. So you're kind of guiding a model with multiple examples. So, Gabe, of course, we work in marketing in the broadband space. So, an example prompt here would be, here's a marketing message for managing home Wi Fi and another for parental controls. Now, make me one for outdoor Wi-Fi. I've given it two examples and I've requested the output. So that's kind of the other example. And again, you can kind of start to see that that response is going to be much different than simply stating, write me a message for outdoor Wi-Fi. Again, we just gave it two examples and now we want to use that as a reference for our AI output.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's like you said, kind of level one, level two. I think we all started at level one. And frankly, this was probably due to how we all searched for things before. Google gave us we all got very used to just Google search. And in Google search, it's better to be succinct, and so you have the kind of weird broken sentences almost that you would use for search. Well, then we started figuring out prompting, and it all was that very basic kind of direct prompts. And as you said, we sort of moved now to phase two and in some even additional phases that we'll talk here about in a moment. But providing that additional context to your point can make your output so much better because it has that context of what it is that you're actually trying to do.
Yeah, and the next one here, Gabe, is going to be called chain of thoughts here, and
I'm
the
excited to
high
talk about this one. I've been doing that a lot this week.
yeah, and at a high level, this is really just step by step instructions. So you could go to the AI model of your choice and say, as a BXP marketing strategist, I want to improve mobile app adoption. Please identify the I just said please, so I just cost it a few $1 million, but identify the pain points and then identify three personas based on those pain points. And then for each persona, outline a personalized marketing message. And you can kind of keep going on and on and on. But there, what I just did is my prompt. I said, I want to improve mobile app adoption. I want you to identify pain points. And then I want you to identify three personas based on those pain points. And then finally, for each persona, write me that personalized messaging. So you can kind of see, the chain or the step by step within that prompt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this idea of the chain of thought or kind of step by step. And this is something that again I've been using a lot lately. And it's part of it is the way I write, I need to like close a thought before I move on to the next thought. And so what I found myself doing is writing a prompt. And at the end of that, I will say, don't start doing any work yet. I have more context to tell you. And I think that's really important because as you're going, if you're using Copilot or something like that, you start type a prompt in. Well, it starts immediately working on the thing that you asked it to do. And it's like, whoa, 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 hold up. I'm not done yet. I need to provide you some additional context. But just the way my brain works, I find it better to write a chunk, then write another chunk, and then write another chunk. And kind of, especially when it's these multi-step pieces, it just helps me formulate my thoughts a lot better. But again, you can tell it, hey, don't start doing anything yet until I get through all of this.
I don't know if this is like a generational thing, but one of the things I really wanted to
Are
do
you
in
about to
college
call me old?
No, well, yeah, but one of the things I really wanted to do in college was kind of a study on how people interact with things like Alexa, Google Home, Siri, Bixby, things like that. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I noticed for me specifically, it's like talking on the phone. It's like talking to you, Gabe. I'm talking to AI as if it's actually someone. So when I'm doing these prompts, it feels very conversational. Whereas some people may do more of that direct prompt or our final one here, which is a zero shot, which we'll talk about in a minute. They're very just direct and explicit with what they want. They want the output. They just go out, do this thing, come back. But as you add more context, so Dave, as if I was talking to you on a call and making a strategic plan for a customer, that additional context is going to help you generate a better response. And the last thing here I mentioned there, that zero shot, this is a prompt similar to a direct prompt. So in this case, you just don't really have any prior examples. You're simply relying on the AI model to use its general knowledge, any patterns it's learned to provide that output. So if I was to, do a prompt here, it could be something like write a short ad to promote outdoor Wi-Fi service in a small town. Just enough context, but there's really no background information, no examples to go off of. And whatever the AI model knows about outdoor Wi-Fi in small towns is going to be what influences the results. So those are kind of like the top few prompting 101s. I think the next thing here, Gabe, is just how AI can answer questions. And again, this is stuff we probably all learned in high school, college as well. But open-ended questions, specific questions, opinion based. So the opinion based one is interesting because when you're asking AI, this is kind of
You're
like a
asking
zero
a
shot
computer
here,
their
right?
opinion. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
and
Yes,
this goes back to the trust but validate kind of mindset there. But
for
just
sure.
going to ask AI for its opinion on a subject. So that's a good one as well. But of course, I mentioned open it. That one I think is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, whether it's a person or a computer, if you ask open-ended questions, you're likely going to get better answers. And I think that's true of most conversations. And to your point, specific questions are going to get you better answers too. The other one that I know you've done a lot, Zach, too, and I've been playing with lately also is, what did I miss? Like, what if I have this list of things that I think are use cases or outputs that I want, asking the AI, what are my blind spots? What did I miss? What did I not think about here? And I've gotten some really interesting answers when I've done that because it's given me some additional use cases, additional thoughts to consider that just weren't part of my original thought process. And I know that's one that you've done quite a bit too.
Oh, you know me. I've shared this with so many colleagues, but on a more personal note, if you use AI a lot, identify the blind spots in my life. That prompt, um, if you want the prompt, it's something like, using what you know about me, again, that data, identify, 5 to 10 blind spots. But that one's just fun to begin with. But you could like if you use that, you can start to see, how what you input as a prompt changes the output, enhances it, makes it better, makes it worse.
Mhm.
So that's kind of prompting 101. But when it comes to writing better prompts, let's kind of talk about how you can do that. And I think one of my favorites is just using action verbs to specify the desired action. What do you want to do? Gabe, again, working in the broadband space. I want to increase app adoption. How do I do that? Well, I might go to AI and I could say something like, write a headline that captures, so that's number one, attention, and explains, number two, the benefits of the Command IQ app, using those action verbs to in this case, have the desired action of explaining the benefits of the Command IQ app.
Yep, that's a perfect way to explain it. It's just, like you said, creating a little bit more excitement, especially when we're writing marketing copy. We want it to have a bit more enthusiasm. Where, Zach, we talked about calls to outcome in the past, not calls to action. And as you're thinking about those calls to outcome, what outcome are you looking to drive? What action are you looking to drive? Including those action verbs becomes really important.
Yeah, and the next one here is I found this one to be increasingly more useful. Particularly, I found this one when I was working with mobile notifications. With mobile notifications, you have a character limit. So another way to improve your prompt is to define the desired length and the format. So when I'm working with mobile notifications, if I have a hypothetical 200 character limit, I can go back to my AI agent and say, write a 200 character mobile notification to let subscribers know they can now connect to free community Wi-Fi in local parks and while downtown. And AI, of course, is going to work within those parameters that I've established to provide that output. And I also think of, that's great for mobile notifications. Let's talk about Facebook. When you do a Facebook post, I don't want to read a life story on Facebook or, even on Instagram. If you have to expand that post down, you really need to capture people's attention quickly.
Well,
So,
that's the bit, right? You have that limit of characters, whether it be on
exactly.
Facebook proper or Instagram, where, okay, let's think about what that number of characters is, because it's got to be really strong at the beginning of that in order for people to actually click the button and expand out.
Yeah, think how easy it is, Gabe, to scroll
Oh,
past
so easy to
content on
scroll
social
past.
media. If you're not capturing attention, people are just going to keep scrolling. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a great one too. And you could add that into the prompt, capture attention, quickly capture attention. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a bit. But
Mm-hmm.
the other one I really like, and this kind of ties back into how much, Gabe, we talk about personalization, specifying your target audience. Who is this message for? So the prompt you might use here, create an email that targets parents, promoting how they can use Command IQ to manage screen time, set time limits, block apps, and to keep their families safe and secure online. Not only do I have that kind of call to outcome in there, but I've specified to the AI agent that this message is for parents. This message is for families who have kids. Without that, of course, your response here, especially in marketing, could go sideways. We could talk to the wrong target audience about the wrong message, or to our episode last week with Joe, the invite's not going to match the party. So specifying your target audience within your prompt is going to get you a better result.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is important. I love this use case from a external marketing perspective. I also think this is really important for internal communication also. When most of the people that are listening to this are working in companies where you have to communicate internally, and you have to communicate in a way that's going to resonate with people. And I told you this story earlier, Zach, but I wanted my boss to send an email as a follow-up to a meeting that we had earlier in the week. Well, thankfully the meeting was recorded, and I was able to ask AI to create an email that was for a specific audience, in this case, salespeople. I wanted it to be enthusiastic, so I asked it for a whole bunch of emojis. I wanted it to be in her tone, so I asked it for that as well. And I sent it to her and said, hey, can you do me a quick favor and review this? And then I'd like you to send it out, to this specific group. And she was like, 10 out of 10 email. This thing's amazing. I can't believe this. This is wonderful. And I'm like, well, 97% of this was written by AI. And then I read through it and, tweaked a few things. So specifying that target audience, again, I think is really important, both internally and externally. Externally, if you're writing email copy for marketing reasons, absolutely, right? You want to make sure you're thinking about your target audience. But for all of us who are sending a whole bunch of emails every day, whether that be to customers or internal people, it's a great way to start to leverage it from that perspective too.
Just two things came to mind. Number one, I love that you asked AI to use emojis. That does
it
match.
did a pretty good job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've said that exact same prompt, like use, emojis in this message, because that's more realistic to how I communicate in real life. Now, I'm not going to overwhelm you with emojis, but I do use them, of course, mostly just
I
the awkward
aggressively
emoji.
put a lot in this email, but it was
Just
fine.
like 5 exclamation points, 2 on every sentence. But the other part too, and I'm going to say this, and for anyone listening, this is like an aha moment, like send me an email, because have you ever noticed, Gabe, how often AI uses just like a hyphen, like a dash in its
The M
responses?
dash. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. tell AI to stop using that to solve that problem because, especially when it comes to marketing, like we don't use that too often or, in just natural
That's true.
communication, the AI models love putting that in there. So whenever I see that in a paragraph, I'm like, did this come from AI? And 9 times out of 10, yes, for other
Yes.
reasons, but
Yeah.
that's just a side note there. But the last thing here is all about providing context. And Gabe, I'm gonna pass it over to you to talk about this a little bit as well. But when I talk about context, let's talk about relevant facts and data. Gabe, we are both very data-driven marketers. We geek out about data constantly. So I kind of made this prompt here, and it says, based on recent trends, or you could say based on this data set, that shows 75% of subscribers have downloaded our app, and those who have downloaded the app have 80% fewer support calls. Draft a marketing message that encourages subscribers to download the app. I love this one because I'm telling the AI model, hey, 75% of my subs have the app, and of those subscribers who do have the app, they have 80% fewer calls. So now let's have AI kind of bridge that together, take what we just talked about, those relevant facts and data, and output something to target those who don't yet have the app. And of course, knowing the benefits.
Yeah. I guess a great example. And to extend on that, we've talked about this a little bit in the past too, Zach, but this is a great place where you could use AI to read through reviews and then take that and add it as a social proof component into that email. So if I'm trying to send this out to people to encourage them to do a thing, in this case, download an app, wouldn't it be lovely to have a direct quote from a customer that talks about how wonderful the app is? You can do that very easily by leveraging your Google reviews and using AI as natural language to actually search through those. So I think that's a great prompt, and then adding that additional information in there could be even make it even more effective.
And Gabe, on that same note, not only should we add additional information, but you should specify your target audience. If you have Jane Doe, who's a gamer, make sure you specify that in your prompt. Or John Doe, who has a family, specify that in your prompt. Segment, divide, and again, personalize that message on different levels there. So we can almost kind of get into a chain there, but
Yeah, for sure.
again, personalize that as well. And that kind of leads into what we just kind of mentioned there is, relevant facts and data, but referencing specific sources and documents. Gabe, whether it's Google reviews, an Excel file, a PowerPoint, referencing those files and that information. For example, in this prompt, of course, be cognizant of what you can put into AI, but based on the
Or which
attached finance,
AI you're using to make
based
sure
on
it's
the
maybe
yeah, based on
private thing.
the based on the attached publicly available financial report,
There you go.
analyze the company's profitability over the last 5 years. Gabe, we've done this. We've talked about, companies like Apple. And for a while, we were geeking out on like every time Apple would release their earnings, we'd be looking at their services revenue. And now I really want to go back and be like, okay, well, based on data, like how has Apple's services revenue grown over the last 20 years compared to other business units, things like that. Again, just making sure that the data source you're using is appropriate and available to be input into a model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yes, absolutely. We want to make sure we're not using any sort of private information when we're doing those types of things. But I have a couple of examples here, and these are specific projects that I was working on this week. So there was within Copilot, there's a couple of different agents that I'm pretty sure everybody has access to. Maybe I think they're broadly available. There's an analytics agent and there's a researcher agent. And I had an opportunity to play with both of these this week and was really impressed with the results. So I'll talk about the researcher one really quick. I was working on a project where we were ironically talking about AI and some of the specific use cases that broadband service providers could leverage AI for. And so I wanted to create a bit more of a detailed report around each one of these use cases and have it go do research for me around how broadband service providers broadly have been talking about each one of these use cases, which ones they were doing already, which ones they were looking at doing, what are some of the potential benefits. And I got a 57-page report, Zach, that was spit out after a few detailed prompts. And this is another situation where I kind of prompted, then I provided it more context and provided it more context. But I got a really detailed report, and it was really, really good. And it was shockingly informative. It was really beneficial. It broke down the pros and cons. It talked about the potential stumbling blocks of each one of these specific use cases. It was really impressive. However, I had a 57-page report, and I knew that not everybody was going to read through this thing. So I leveraged another tool in Copilot to, if you have a Word doc with a big, a big research report in Word, you can have Copilot actually just create a summary podcast that talks through the report. And it took maybe, I don't know, 2-3 minutes to create this podcast. And within a couple of minutes, it had a 15-minute podcast that summarized a 57-page report in a pretty short period of time, and did a really good job in a conversational way of talking through some of it, or talking through all of it, I should say. And I will say, I don't think it's going to put us out of a job, Zach. I think we're going to be good for a while on the podcast front. It wasn't perfect.
I was getting nervous where this was going. No,
I think we're good. But it was helpful to have that kind of back and forth. It had a 2-person conversation. It definitely felt a bit stilted, right? It wasn't clearly a natural conversation. But for summarizing a 57-page document in 15 minutes, of course, I listened to it on 1.5 times, so it was probably 10 minutes. But it was really, really good. So I would encourage people to play with this. If you have large research projects that you need to do, leverage that tool in Copilot to think about these multiple prompts, think about what you'd want to get out of it, and then start to summarize that into some audio output as well.
Our college audience, Gabe, is taking notes now. So, but
yeah, for real. Yeah, anybody in grad school, I feel like could use that tomorrow. I do want to talk about the analyst one too, but anything else you want to add to that before I talk to the analyst one?
No, Gabe, I was going to hand it over to you to talk about the analyst agent.
Cool. Let me talk about this one too, real quick. I'll try and make this quick because this was another interesting one. So I feel like if this existed when I was first starting my career, I would be screwed because I never would have learned how to actually do anything in Excel. But this was pretty impressive. So I was playing around with this week also, where I had a big data set and I wanted to give it some instructions around how to analyze that data set. So I had this data set of kind of made up, it was demonstration data just because I wanted to play with this a little bit. So I imported that into Copilot and I gave it some very specific prompts around what I wanted it to do and what I wanted it to look at. And the nice part about this is if you have, a lot of times we get reports on a monthly, a quarterly, a weekly basis, whatever. And a lot of times they're coming from other places. Maybe they're coming from Salesforce, or they're coming from Power BI, or they're coming from some other cloud solution. Well, the good news about that is they're generally fairly static, right? The column headers are the same. The descriptions in the data are the same. And we're usually just having to analyze a refreshed set of data. Well, you can leverage the prompt that you created last month as long as the data headers are all the same. So what I told it was, hey, I've got this column, it's named this, and this column is named this, and this column is named this. And I want you to look at the data that's in each one of these columns. And that makes it super easy to replicate on a go-forward basis because now I have this prompt structure that I've created. And again, all the data column headings are probably named the same. So in a month, if I want to go run that same thing and do an analysis, I've got probably 95% of the work done, and I've just got to load up a new data set and I'm off to the races. But it actually went through and did Python scripts and created all this stuff and created a really succinct output for me that told me, here's the data that I would be looking at as part of this information that you provided. I was blown away.
That's another great way to use AI, Game. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to have to experiment a little bit here now after hearing that one.
Yeah, you definitely need to play with the analyst one. I was really, really impressed. And like I said, I would have been, had I had that when I started my finance and accounting career, I would have been super screwed because I never would have played with Excel as much as I did. And I would not be as adept at it as I am. But, it was really impressive and again, I think most of us are in these situations where we're asked to analyze data on a somewhat regular basis. And again, often it's a similar data set. It's just, here's my sales for this quarter, or here's my customer base as of this point in time. the data headers and the structure are going to be the same. So if you do the hard work of, I don't even say hard work, but just do the work of creating a structure in the prompt, then you can reuse a huge portion of it as you move forward.
And one of the last strategies here we have, I debated even talking about this one, to be honest, Gabe. So I'm gonna like begin this by saying, don't do this because we don't like talking about the technical aspects of being a broadband experience provider. But being able to, have your prompt define key terms and concepts. So, like the example that comes to mind is, and we've talked about this in the podcast in the past, is explain optical networking in simple terms suitable for a non-technical audience. Now, I'm not saying go out and talk about fiber on Facebook or talk about fiber on your website and fiber to the home, fiber to the prem, and we don't like doing that. But if you're looking to learn more about a subject, Gabe, I think in the past I said explain this to me like I'm whatever age, or explain this to me in elementary terms, or however we can break down those complex concepts. That's just a great prompt to use there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next two I had here, these strategies are kind of focused on some example prompts you could be using today and maybe how you could change them to be better. And the first one here is to be specific. So today, you might write something like, write a marketing message on why we should launch outdoor Wi-Fi. Okay, that's a prompt, it's pretty direct. But instead of saying that, you might say something like, write a persuasive essay arguing why my BXP should invest in outdoor community Wi-Fi to increase subscriber satisfaction, showcase local leadership, so on, and include real life trends to support these points. End prompt. That's going to give you a much better result than simply saying, write this. Again, being specific in your response.
Yeah, I think that's a really great example. And again, to extend on that, I really like that one. And it's similar to the research project that I was doing earlier this week, where in that context, you could say, who are the local leaders in my area? Put in their names, go find out what they talk about. If it's city council or mayor or whoever, they're probably giving speeches. They probably have a bunch of information that's out there about them online. That's the things that they care about. So how do you align, in that case, community Wi-Fi to the things that they care about, and that real world trends to support points? I love that, Zach. That's such a good one to add in there as a, what are those broader trends that are happening in the world to support the activity that you want to do?
Absolutely. And then last one here, Gabe, is kind of going back to what we talked about with the explaining fiber, but just breaking down complex tasks. What do you do in your job that's complex, and how can we break it down? Gabe, again, marketing example. You might say to your AI agent of choice, create a marketing plan. Well, great, but what does that actually mean? What is in a marketing plan? So your prompt may be something instead like, create a marketing plan that identifies the target audience, and then develop a key marketing message that does XYZ, and then choose the appropriate marketing channels for this campaign or for this messaging. So just kind of breaking down a complex task, in this case, a marketing plan, to the different components is a great way to prompt AI as well.
Mm-hmm. And to go back to my earlier point, Zach, you'd be maybe more adept at writing a longer prompt in a single kind of shot than I am, because of how your brain operates and just your approach to dealing with the computer. I need to kind of break it down into those chunks, and that's okay. Write what you need, take a breath, tell the AI not to do anything yet, figure out what your next thing is. Like, it doesn't have to just be all one giant prompt.
Gabe, are you like the person that does sentence one, like shift enter, line break, sentence two, paragraph
Yes,
two? Because
100%.
I found myself guilty of that. But what I'm also guilty of, I told you I like to be conversational with AI. So I'll often just use, and by often I would say this is probably 80% of my AI, but I'll just click the microphone, like text to or speech to text button, say whatever I'm saying. And it's funny because sometimes I'll be like, oh, sorry, I meant like correct myself in line. But you know what I haven't actually fully adopted yet, Gabe, is the actual like voice AI component where you're just having that natural speaking conversations between you and the agent who's speaking back to you. So that's probably next on my list now that I think about it. But so many ways to create some very great, very unique prompts. There's a lot of resources out there as well. Different companies have their own prompting guides. There's websites, there's tools. There's a subreddit talking about prompt engineering and AI prompting. So there's so many resources. You could probably even go to AI and learn how to, build new prompts. Teach me how to prompt better. Actually, that's a good prompt. I'm going to try it after this episode, Gabe. I'm going to go back to my Chat GPT or my Google Gemini, whatever my app of choice is, and I'm going to say, hey, based on how we've interacted, what are some ways I could improve my prompts?
That's
And
a
maybe
great
next week
one.
maybe next week we'll talk about the findings on the podcast. So stay tuned.
Awesome. I love that. That's a really good one, especially because, again, it has that context. It has your history in there. So you can get that insight into how you could be doing a better job. It's a fun
Well, now,
episode, Zach.
yeah, well, I hate to stop it here, but now I've got to go try this prompt. So we have to shut things down. So thank you everyone for tuning into Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn.